Hey everyone, welcome back to the railroad, the Union Pacific Railroad Evanston Subdivision in HO Scale. My name is Daryl Cruz, owner and builder of the layout, and your host for a special Westward cab ride. Last week we did the Eastward cab ride. This week I thought I would go ahead and do the Westward cab ride. In both cases, we start out in the staging yard, but in this case, we begin with the helix. And instead of ending with the helix as we did on the eastward ride, you notice as we come into the helix, there's a double crossover here by Wathers. I'm going to remove this double crossover. It really is not ever used. It's not very accessible, and it's at the bottom of a curve. So it really does not do all that well operationally. Don't have derailments very often there, but if I do have a derailment on the helix, that is one of the places that it might possibly happen. All right, so we are going up the helix, and as you notice, I am doing sound this time. Some people had some issues with there being no sound. I think they were probably missing the engine sounds, which I still don't have because this camera does not record audio. But I think they were also missing information provided during the video. So we'll try to do that. We'll try to do that this time and provide as much information as I can as we go westward on the layout. As you notice, we are on the outside loop. All upgrade trains go on the outside loop, which is less of an incline, slightly less of an incline than the inside loop. This outside loop is just under 2% grade, and able to pull trains with 3 locomotives. I can pull trains of over 30 cars. A lot of it just depends on what type of cars they are. Some cars have more friction issues than others, but if it's a train of free-rolling cars, I can pull in excess of 30 cars going up the incline. I do have some trains that have 40 cars. In fact, our coal train has 46 cars. And that does require 4 locomotives, and that still works out very well. I do use distributive power as much as I can on the layout. I do have 4 trains that do not have distributive power. And in those cases, there are some times when the couplers decide to come uncoupled at the top of the helix, and you have a train running at warp speed going down the helix, and then of course it usually derails at the yard throat because at the bottom of the helix is the staging yard. But as I'm adding KD couplers to all the cars, that's becoming less and less of an issue, and I'm sure at some point it'll be not an issue at all. So overall, the helix operates extremely well. Do not have very many derailments or problems with it at all now, and that's just going to get better. As you notice, there are 3 tracks here. The very left-hand track is the extra loop that the downgrade trains take to make a crossover. And that crossover is there to compensate for the crossover. I shouldn't say crossover, the flyover. It's a flyover, and the main lines change. So right now we are right-hand running. We went up the helix as left-hand running. So that extra loop and the flyover in the helix compensates for the flyover at Curvo. So the main line does switch from right-hand running to left-hand running, and then back again. At the staging yard, it is left-hand running, and then we did cross over to the right-hand running now on the easternmost part of the layout, and we'll stay on the right-hand running until we get to the curve flyover, and we'll switch them back to left-hand running. So this represents, at the top of the helix is Peru, and we are heading towards West Vaco. So this is the easternmost part of the Evanston Sub. From Green River is where it starts, and then goes towards Evanston, and then eventually Ogden and Riverdale Yard. Now the upper level here, you can see the lower level down below. The upper level is mainly going to be just this 10 inches wide bench work with a photo backdrop. You have some trees there to hide the seams of the backdrop, and we do have a green signal, it looks like. This is the West Vaco control point. This bridges over the peninsula. The lower level goes through the peninsula, which is to the left, but the upper level just continues along the wall. So the West Vaco control point is right there between the peninsula, at the base of the peninsula, and as you can see, there is the West Vaco mine and plant to the left with the empties in and loads out. The basement window to the right, that's going to be covered up by backdrop eventually. And at West Vaco, it does get a little bit wider. It's about maybe 18 inches wide there. There's the switcher for the West Vaco yard. It's an interesting operations point. And so we're now past West Vaco and heading towards Granger. Again, you can see we're back to the 10-inch bench work here. Still have a lot of backdrop to put in. This will be a very simple scenicking of this upper level. At West Vaco, if you're on the floor, standing on the floor, it's right at my eye level. There is a bench to stand on there. We have another green signal. This is Granger. There's a platform at West Vaco. So when you're doing the operations, you are at a comfortable level to operate. There is a 3-mast signal bridge at Granger. There will be that track there to the right. That's going to be the Pocatello Sub coming off. There is still a little bit of track that needs to be laid. So that's going to continue here. You can see the roadbed for the track. I was thinking about putting a seam divider here between the Pocatello Sub, which will go on that roadbed, and then now you can see there is some track there. That's going to be the Pocatello Sub. I was going to put a seam divider there, but as I'm thinking about it, I think I'm just going to keep it visible. That'll be a lot better operationally, and when you're at Granger, you can see the Pocatello Sub is right there, and alongside the Evanston Sub for quite a while, as we have a meet with looks like an ethanol train. That's the train that did the eastward run. We are now on the westward run. This is the location of the Golden Spike, when we finally had track laid all the way around. And we are coming up on the Aspen control point. And we do have a green signal again. I think it's going to be green all the way around. So this is still the 10-inch bench work. We are going to have the aspen tunnels here in the corner, so the benchwork gets wider again here, and you can see with the fascia. I am going to have some tunnels here in the mountains. I'm going to change that fascia. It's way too symmetrical. So I am going to make some adjustments to that. I might completely redo it. I do have a couple tunnel portals there ready to go in. But this is going to be the Aspen tunnels. This is actually on the Evanston Sub. It is the high point of the Evanston Sub. But you do have a summit at Aspen here. But there is also a summit at Wasatch. So the track right now is going downgrade towards Evanston. But after it gets to Evanston, it actually goes back up again at Wasatch. So Wasatch is kind of a summit also. However, it is a lower elevation than the Aspen summit. Now we are now on just layout infrastructure here. You notice it just changes to white. This is just to transport the track above the staging yard. We're about 17, 18 inches above the staging yard track. And we're going through the furnace room now and making the transition from the upper level to the lower level. And the track to the left there is the switching lead for Evanston. And then now we're coming up on another control point. This is the East Evanston control point. And you can see there is the access to the yard. If this train was going to go into the yard, the dispatcher would have crossed me over at Aspen or maybe even Granger. Crossed me over to the left-hand side, and then I could have gone ahead and entered the yard. You can see the helix on the right, and then above us right now is the upper level. And the benchwork is about 2 feet wide at this point. So even though the separation between the levels is pretty small here, it's like 10, 11 inches. Here, the upper level is only 10 inches wide, the lower level is 24 inches. So most of the lower level is out from under the upper level. Now the track right here is pretty much under the upper level, but the yard itself and most of what's going on here is on the is not covered by the upper level. And now we have the west control point, which doesn't really affect us, but that is the entrance into the west end of the yard. And then you have the switching lead here and the switchers on the west end of Evanston. And we are now heading towards Wasatch. And we are going uphill now again towards Evanston. You can see the switching lead is getting lower from where we are, and we're coming up on the UTLX repair facility. This is the section of the layout that I'm working on scenery at this time. And then as you can see up above at West Faco, that's where the upper level just crosses over. We now on the lower level are going to go onto the peninsula. And so this peninsula is completely uncovered out in the open, and really get to have some pretty dramatic looking scenery, mountain scenery. We are now coming up on the Wasatch control point. And then now we are going down grade, down the Wasatch grade. This is where we have the most completed scenery. Notice I do have ballast in and the plaster and painted scenery and ground foam and vegetation and so forth. Still want to do a little bit of more work. I need to weather the track still, put on static grass. We're on the original main line, which the UP uses for downgrade trains. You notice this is where the two main lines separate from each other. If we go through a cut, and there's a train. That's that same auto rack train we saw on the Helix. We are going into the tunnel. Now, inside this tunnel, there is a 32-inch curve. This is or 33-inch. I forget what it is exactly, but it is the sharpest curve on the main line. But now we're back to 42 inches. That's out in the open. So we did put a sharper curve there in the tunnel. And I do need to put some tunnel sleeves here to kind of hide that. Now we're going across Curvo, my pretty cool part of the layout. Now, if we had sound on, you would be able to hear the dynamic brakes. Definitely am going to try and get a camera that has sound recording. That definitely would be better for cab rides. So I will be doing that in the future, and there will be continuous cab rides posted every once in a while as I do more scenery. But this is still gives you a good idea of how things look from the cab view. Again, we're coming down the Wasatch grade. The two main lines separate, and then in elevation as well as separation. Now they do come back here at Emory. We're just going past the Castle Rock area there. I'm going to use some photo backdrops along that scenery, also static grass. All right, so here's the Emory control point. You notice we are under the upper level here again. And as you can see, also the upper level is a little bit wider. This is where the West Vaco yard is. So we are under the upper level a bit for a while. The separation here is about 15 inches, so it doesn't look too bad. One thing that helps with the two levels is that the layout is pretty high. So you're able to see the entire backdrop pretty much. The upper level doesn't extend out that far, and then with it being a layout being a little bit higher, the upper level does not obscure the backdrop of the lower level. This is Echo. We just went past the Echo Canyon there, and we're making that transition now to the Weber River Canyon, and this is going to be the Wholesome Cement area to the right. And you can see their upper level is kind of wide there, but we're still not out from under the upper level. And we're crossing the Weber River for the first time and coming up to the Devil's Slide control point. There is a siding here for switching opportunities, and then a spur that goes down to Wholesome Cement. So there are two trains that swap cars out at Wholesome Cement, and that's the Devil's Slide control point. And then the actual Devil's Slide geological formation will be to the right here in that big space. There'll be the Devil's Slide as well as the Weber River and Highway Interstate 84. And coming up here, we'll be crossing the Weber River a couple more times. The Weber River is crossed multiple times by the Union Pacific. I'm not sure how many exactly, but this will be a bridge going over the Weber River. Then we'll come into the Taggart Tunnels, a pretty famous area. And then we'll be coming out of the Taggart Tunnels. And then finally crossing the Weber River one more time. And the separation here and the rest of the way is about 17, 18 inches. So 10-inch bench work for the upper level, about 2 feet for the lower level. So even though there are two levels, the upper level does not obscure the lower level at all. So it works out pretty good visually. Need to, of course, do a lot of scenery work here and backdrops and so on, but that's all coming down the line. And this is coming into Morgan. We're going across the overpass there. And then this will be the town of Morgan to the right. There'll be a station there as we have another meet with that same tank train, I think. And then we have a flashing yellow to come into the yard. This is the Morgan control point, another overpass. And then we are coming into the yard then. And we'll go ahead and enter the same track that we started out on. You can see the upper level when we were traveling on the white. That was the area there. So this white area is the staging yard, and then the transition from the upper level to the lower level. This is going through the wall, and we're going to go under the stairs now. Most of this little part right here that the train's on now is not real accessible. I can get to it, but it takes some crawling under the layout. But then right now, we're out from under the stairs and everything. The rest of the staging yard is completely accessible, which is, well, one thing I really like. All right. So we're almost back to where we started. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Make sure you like the video, subscribe. We really appreciate all those things. Comments, always appreciate your comments. Any ideas for a camera, cheap camera that has sound, be interested in that. Hope you have a great weekend coming up, Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy. Take care, everybody.